to Woodford County Hometown Highlights, part of the What's Up Woodford Network, the podcast where we explore the stories, people, and history that make Woodford County such a special place to call home. I'm your guest host today, Sherry Daniels, the local history librarian for the Woodford County Library's History Room. And today I'm joined by Dr. Anissa Penn-Davis, not only a fellow genealogist, but a good friend. And she's joining me today because she happens to be our host of the now award-winning program, Tracing Your Roots, which happens almost every second Sunday of the month. And I'm going to let Anissa give you guys a little bit of background of who she is and why we're now calling that program an award-winning program.
Well, thank you, Sherry. I've lived in Woodford County since I was 6. My family's been in Woodford County for generations. I am a 1988 graduate of Woodford County High School, kind of dating me right there. But I just love Woodford County, and I love genealogy, and I love doing the research going back. We started doing the Tracing Your Roots a few years ago before you got here. And when the materials from the Historical Society were moving over to the library, I said, they're going to need people that know what they're doing.
How to do that.
And so I went to that particular history room librarian and said, hey, can we do this together? Yeah. Can we come together with my DAR chapter, the General Marquis Calmes chapter, who just celebrated 100, we're 102 now.
Wow.
And so I said, can we, mesh together and do this? Yeah. And so, as you said, it's almost every second Sunday of the month.
Right.
We don't interfere with Super Bowl Sunday. We learned,
or Mother's Day,
last month. and sometimes there's Mother Nature. Sometimes I'm on vacation. Exactly. So we try to do most of the Sundays. Some people have asked, like, what programs do we do?
Yeah.
And we don't.
Right.
Because what it's been tailored to, and I guess we could do a program at some point, but what we tailor it to is to who shows up.
Right.
Because,
so it's essentially one-on-one.
Right.
Or should we say group? Because sometimes you get maybe half a dozen people in there sometimes.
we do. We get some good people. And sometimes they're beginners. So it's a genealogy 101 class.
Right.
Sometimes it's people wanting to join a lineage society. Right. And so, we'll go down that path. Yeah. Sometimes it's just a brick wall. And where I've been in education for 23 years, we tend to differentiate. And so we will go through and get everybody on the path that they need to be on and hopefully moving forward on that path.
Awesome. That's great. And DAR is a good fit for that because, there's, because of the lineage aspect of joining, you've already been involved in the DAR in that aspect anyway, in that role.
Yes,
I'm multiple roles, right?
Multiple roles. Yeah. I'm currently the chapter registrar, so I help people get in. But I've been a member of DAR since I was 19, so since 1989.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, like 36 years.
I too am a member of my daughter, but only 10 years. So I'm a young one.
10 years. Because I remember when we were trying to get you in.
I know.
It doesn't seem like it's been 10 years.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. My goodness. Yeah, time definitely. Whew. Yeah. So you've kind of outlined for us a little bit about what the need was, and that absolutely was necessary. I think that was a really great call because it's true. We have so many resources in there, but not everybody knows how to walk in and use them.
Right.
So no, and just getting that one-on-one help, because genealogy, researching family's history can be intimidating. It really
absolutely can.
Yes, absolutely. So I know this is very hands-on research help, and again, over the past, few years now. And what would you say is the most common place that people kind of get stuck in their in researching their family history, and especially trying to get back to that American Revolution era ancestor?
Yeah. A lot of times, because in Kentucky, birth and death certificates weren't required until 1911. So a lot of people, well, first of all, they'll try to start at the Patriot they think they have and work forward. Right. And then I tell them, no, you need to start with you and work backwards. And so once they get to the point where they can't get a birth certificate or a death certificate, that's where they tend to get stuck. And so that's when I come in and say, well, have you looked for a will?
Right.
Have you looked at cemetery plots for clues? Deeds, tax records can get a little more
Right.
in depth,
Yeah.
on some things.
Yeah.
But just try to give them pointers.
Yeah.
And since you've come in and the library is now part of the Family Search family,
Right. Yes.
and so you can get on the library's computers and get a little bit more access than what you could do at home.
Yes. Yes.
That's helped them, some people find more information than they probably would have.
Yeah.
So thanks for that.
Yes, absolutely. Anissa's talking about the Family Search's affiliate library program. And so when I came in we're almost at a year and a half now. That's a free program. So any library can just sign the agreement that just means we get more access to the images and documents that are available through their site while you're on site at the library. So it is technically something you can sign up for free from home and use it from home. You can kind of get a little bit of your first efforts. You can build a tree in there. You can do some research, start, your research in there. But yes, you can get additional documents there while you're sitting in the library. So that's awesome. And I think another thing too, you mentioned just the various documents that are available. And I think once you get back to, I don't want to say it necessarily gets harder, but I think the closer you get to that Revolutionary period, it even gets harder too, because then we start to maybe, that connection maybe goes into different states for us.
That
it
is
definitely
true.
can go to different counties for us.
Yes.
And each county can have, a courthouse that burnt down. There can be record
Yes.
loss. And so I'm sure that's something you encounter all the time.
It is, because Kentucky during the Revolutionary time frame was not Kentucky.
Right.
We were part of Virginia. And while we may be able to find some records here where a patriot may have gotten land records or gotten, land, the name just escaped me, but land grants. Thank you. Land grants in this area, and, probably died here.
Right.
And then with that and some other online availabilities with like Fold 3, we might find some pension records and things like that.
Yeah.
But thankfully, with so much being digitized, even though only about 10 to 15% are digitized, you still have to do a lot of boots on the ground.
True.
I have to go into Virginia documents a lot.
Yeah.
To find what I'm looking for.
Exactly.
When I'm doing DAR stuff. Now, when I'm doing Mayflower stuff and other things, that throws me up into Massachusetts and New England.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And even just the Revolutionary period, alone, I'm just thinking about how many families just migrated into Kentucky. Even though, yes, those soldiers who came out of Virginia, they're getting land in what we now know as Kentucky. So they're coming in that way. But you've got also all these other people that are coming through Kentucky to go out west anyway. So just think about your family's own migration patterns as well. And every one of those states may have a different laws as far as birth and death records and all of that good stuff. So there's a lot to navigate. And that's why we want Anissa here to help you.
Well, thank you. I have proven 22 patriots for DAR.
Wow.
Yeah, I've got for my family. I've done others, but for my tree, because you mentioned it, so I counted.
Yes.
I've identified about 38. I've proven so far 22, and in that I have patriots from obviously Virginia, but New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland.
Yeah.
So I've got them. I've even got one with Canadian service, which I'm really tickled with.
Right.
Yeah,
that's hard to prove.
Yeah, he was part of a group of men that wanted Nova Scotia to be the 14th colony.
Oh, right.
Obviously, they did not succeed. They did not succeed.
But A for effort, right?
A for effort. He got it, yeah. And I found him just by Googling a name.
Yeah.
And Revolutionary War and a book that he's mentioned and popped up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Google can be your friend.
And, just while I'm thinking about it, that is one thing I don't think a lot of people realize, too, is that the DAR also has an online portal that anybody can use. So if you kind of run into a Revolutionary soldier, in your line and you're like, ooh, let's see if anybody else has joined under that person, then that helps with that lineage kind of meeting in the middle, as it were.
Yes, and just like with the Family Search, there are different levels of access.
Right.
If just the general public can go to dar.org, and at the top, you'll see some buttons. One says genealogy, one says GRS. I would click on the GRS because that's the research services, and there's ancestor, member, and descendants, and there's others, but those are the three main ones.
Right.
For the public to find a member, you have to know their member number.
Right. Right.
But what's easiest for the public usually, well, first, like, did this guy fight in the Revolutionary War? And just because DAR may not have it doesn't mean he didn't fight. It just means somebody hasn't,
Right. They haven't
done an
joined
application.
that person
Right.
yet.
I have proven several new patriots,
Yeah.
but so it's not hard.
Right.
You know, it can be done.
Yeah.
But they can put in the ancestor's name and do that. But I like, especially for the public, the descendants tab.
Right.
Because you're like, well, just like on Sunday when I was at the library, there was someone in there and said, you know what, I think my grandmother was a member.
There you go.
Yeah, well, we couldn't find grandma, but we found great grandma.
There you go.
And we looked in the descendants tab.
Right.
And then we found like grandpa's sister had joined. And so I'm giving her all this information going, and then all you would have to do is hook in to this person.
Yeah. So it's
and
kind of a little shortcut, a little
it
research
is.
shortcut in a way to kind of help you get back, because proving that ancestor is hard to do initially. I mean, I've probably identified maybe half a dozen in my line, but I've only proved the one
Right.
to actually, the one I wanted to join under. The whole application, when I asked for a copy back from DAR, came back all marked in red, said you've got to reprove. So previously, in generations before, the research wasn't quite right, and so
That is correct.
So therefore, that happens. Be prepared; it can happen. Yeah. So I know DAR is not the only lineage society you belong to.
True.
So can you kind of give us a little bit of a rundown? The lineage societies you're connected to, and why these groups have become important to you.
Well, okay, so I went back and counted.
Right.
I belong to 15.
Wow.
Yeah, 15. There's Colonial Dames of America, the Continental Society of Indian Wars, Daughters of American Colonists, Daughters of the American Revolution, Daughters of Colonial Wars, Daughters of the Union, First Families of Kentucky, First Families of Maryland, the National Huguenot Society, Jamestown Society, Magna Carta Dames and Barons, the Mayflower Society, the Nine, which is a hilarious one, Daughters of the Confederacy, and Daughters of the War of 1812.
Wow.
Yeah, so I got Union and Confederacy because
You're both.
Depending on my line, I'm either an 8th or an 11th generation Kentuckian.
Right.
So
Wow.
they're on both sides.
Right. I'm
Yeah.
8. You said 8th or 11th?
Yeah, 8. Wow. Yeah, some lines it's 8, other lines it's 11.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you've racked up, and that's a lot of work to do.
It is. I look at genealogy as a puzzle, and this is how I explain it to people. It's a puzzle of you. Like when I'm doing genealogy, it's a puzzle of a face that you're never going to finish.
Right.
Because every time you get a new generation, then you've got more pieces to try to plug in.
Yeah.
So I belong to all of these, and they're all special in their own ways because it's important to me to honor, the patriots. But there are, like the DAR is really close to my heart.
Yeah.
First Families of Kentucky is really special to me.
Yeah.
First Families of Maryland.
Yeah.
The Jamestown Society.
Yeah.
That was fun because I thought, like Pocahontas. Everybody's got Pocahontas. Well, there's a book that says I have Pocahontas. But then when I went to that registrar and said, hey, I think I have this. And she goes, in that book, there's a generation mishap. But if you have this, then you've got this guy. And I'm like, okay, well, I went in on that guy.
Okay.
And that guy is what they call a gateway ancestor,
Okay.
meaning his genealogy is already proven. So when I got that approval in the mail, they also sent me an application for the Order of Charlemagne because he's
wow,
proven
okay,
back
because he's
to
gone.
Charlemagne.
Right.
I did not do that one. And
Maybe someday.
yeah, and I love the Mayflower Society. They're near and dear to my heart as well. Yeah, I've got 7 passengers. So
Nice.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, that's the thing too. I think with that generation and even the revolutionary generation, once you tap into that generation, you usually have more.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And you can use some of these same patriots. I've like Samuel McDowell, who's my First Families. I proved him for First Families of Kentucky, which blew my mind with everything that he did to get Kentucky to be a state.
Right.
I proved him for in three different societies.
Wow.
Because of what he did in the time frame that he did it in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's amazing. Wow. Oh my goodness, my head's kind of spinning on that. So with the 250th birthday of America coming up just around the corner, how do you plan to celebrate? And let's see, you already said how many Patriots did you say? 22?
In DAR, 22.
22, but over 30.
Over 38 identified.
Gotcha.
I just haven't done the paperwork on them.
So how do you plan to celebrate that?
Well, we did the Liberty Tree.
Yeah.
The DAR, we planted a Liberty Tree out of the Jack Jewett house.
Yeah.
The DAR is having, the goal is to have a tree planted in all 120 counties.
Yeah.
So we're doing that. I don't know when this is going to air, but we're going to be at the Juneteenth. We do the block parties.
Okay, which is tomorrow.
The first one's tomorrow. So we do the block parties, and we give out flags, and we've got little keychains and stuff. But when we do the block parties, our focus is on veterans and the Kentucky Honor Flight, because it costs $600 for a guardian to go with a veteran. The veteran flies free, but the guardian does not. Yeah. And so we raise money. We take donations, and we'll give you stuff for a donation kind of thing. But last year we raised enough money to sponsor 2 guardians, because we don't ever want a veteran to say, we can't afford to go. Right. So,
and that's a lot of what you're listening to are things that the DAR is I guess you'd say regularly involved in some of those things, those activities. Obviously, Liberty Tree, that's this year kind of thing.
Right.
But that's the thing about DAR is people ask, well, why do I belong?
Right.
The reason I joined, the big reason for me was that I wanted one of my ancestors to be completely documented all the way and filed into someplace like DAR so that other researchers could find that line. But then also, too, it's the community involvement I think the DAR is really good about, especially with the youth and veterans and things like that. And so, there's some great programs that they are.
Yeah, and the great thing about DAR is every chapter has I call it its own vibe. They focus on what they want to focus on. Lexington, I think, has 5 chapters. Frankfort has 2.
Right.
Versailles, we just have our 1.
Right. Yeah.
But we all focus usually on something that's near and dear to us.
Yeah.
The General Marquis Calmes chapter has decided to focus on veterans, both men and women.
Right.
So
yeah. Fantastic. So for anyone out there who is interested in joining the DAR, how can they learn more?
Well, you could go on the DAR website, dar.org. There's a form you can fill out, and the DAR will send your information to a chapter that is close to you when you put in things that you're looking for. Yeah. And they'll find one that closely matches that. You can always come to Second Sunday.
That's exactly right.
You could do that, or if your schedule doesn't allow for that, you can always pop in and see Sherry, at the library, and she can always collect your information and give it to me, or she's just as knowledgeable.
Yeah, get you in, take a look. We can pull up that website right there during your visit. So. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and of course for Anissa, look for her on most second Sundays.
Second Sundays.
That was an old memory there.
Yes, it was. Those were great times, though.
Yeah.
Those were great
times.
times.
Know each other for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Yes, I used to work at the State Historical Society in Frankfort, and so we used to have all kinds of programs. She used to come out there, and that's where we kind of got those genealogy minds going.
That's right.
So be watching the library calendar to kind of know when she's going to be at her station there hosting that program. And so for those of you ready to celebrate this momentous Independence Day, just a reminder that the Woodford County Library's History Room and the Woodford County Historical Society will be kicking off festivities with another History Hop event on July 2nd, an American 250th birthday bash at the main branch of the library. We'll have cake and treats, and we'll have some folks profiling the American Revolution veterans who eventually made their home here in Woodford County. And why the second, you ask? Well, for 2 reasons. One, the library is closed on the 3rd and the 4th, so practically we can't do it on the holidays. But also fun history fact, The second is still very significant to our founding history because that was the day the Second Continental Congress voted to break from Great Britain, and the Declaration of Independence document soon followed 2 days later. But they didn't actually sign that until August 2nd and then mail it off to King George. And I know I just blew some people's minds on that. But collective memory of our history can be very truncated and different from the full series of events. In other words, there's so many fun things to learn when you read about our history. And also sending a great big thank you out to all of our reading eagles out there who took on the challenge to read about American history for the first half of 2026. Your treat bags will be ready for pickup around June 30th. So come on in, stop in the library to grab those. And thank you so much, Anissa.
Thanks for having me.
Joining us. I guess we both can say huzzah for
Huzzah!
250. Huzzah! And thank you all for listening to the Woodford County Hometown Highlights. Be sure to visit the History Room at the Woodford County Library and stay connected for upcoming programs and events.